Good morning. So I'm going to start this morning off with a story. So I used to be a teacher at a Christian school, and we used to, in the morning before school from 7 to 7:30, we'd have a devotion, and different teachers would give a devotion every morning. And so if you could have given me an auditorium of children and given me any textbook of any subject, I could have taught it, just because I felt incredibly comfortable teaching children. But the idea of standing in front of a room full of my peers gave me an allergic reaction. It was a full body response of which I went into fight or flight. Okay. So it actually scared me because it took me so much out of my comfort zone, and it made me incredibly uncomfortable. And if you've got your books with you, uncomfortable is your third word. And so I managed for about 2 years to duck and dive my principal, who used to come around with his little clipboard and his pen, and he'd write down names next to dates. So he took names and dates. And I had these hiding spots that I actually had a friend who used to join me, and we used to hide from him when we saw him coming, because we thought if he fills up the slots for the term, we're safe. We don't have to do a devotion. So for about 2 years, I got away with doing one devotion a year, which was okay for me. I was happy to just be uncomfortable for maybe that small space of time. And my husband, the one day, comes to me, goes, "Have you ever considered maybe going to your principal and asking him for a date?" And I looked at him, I said, "Are you not understanding my plan here? Like, I don't want to do this. I choose not to do this." And then he proceeded to go, "But instead of asking your principal for a date, ask him for 2 or 3. And at this moment, I was like, who are you, and where did my husband go? But the theory that my husband Hugh has is that when there's something that we don't want to do or is against opposition to us, his theory is run straight at it. And so I don't know why I did it. I can't tell you to this day, but I think it was out of this challenge. I felt incredibly challenged by him and going, stop hiding from this, just do it. And so that's what I did. The next term came along, and I went to my principal, and my principal almost fell off his chair when I said to him, because he knew I was hiding from him, and I would say, "Can I have these dates?" And then I want 3. And he would go, 3? Are you serious? I'm like, "Yes, 3. But what happened during this course of the next 4 years of doing devotions after devotions, I actually saw God starting to use me, and my prophetic gifting was exercised in these devotions, and God was speaking to people through me, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. But at the same time, during this season, it was one of the hardest seasons of my life. I suffered with an immense amount of fear to the point it was incredibly debilitating. And I also suffered from depression. And I look back now, and I cannot tell you the day it happened, but I just remember waking up one morning and I didn't have fear, and my depression was gone. And the other thing I realized looking back, I go, oh, I see that, God, I see what you were doing. Because now, if you know, my husband and I, we teach Farming God's Way. And this is to adults, not children. And we go into rural communities and we preach the good news of Christ, and we disciple people this rural community for 3 to 5 years, and we assist them in helping them out of the yoke of poverty just through the farming techniques that we teach. But if I hadn't gone through this space of getting over this fear of presenting or preaching the good news of God to my peers, God could see this. He had predestined this. He could see the picture that he had painted for us, for me, and went, okay, but I need you to do this now. And so this outworking came from this incredibly uncomfortable experience. And so I'm going to now tell you what giant we're doing today. John has mentioned it. We are doing giant number 6, Remain Undisturbed. Okay, so when I thought about this giant, I know last week Sam mentioned her giant was a little bit sneaky and a little bit more crafty. Chris's giant, I think he stood on a chair. It was massive. My giant, and pardon the reference, is Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars. So if you're a Star Wars fan, you know what I'm talking about. Jabba the Hutt, for those of you who don't, is this big slug-looking character. And he's got all these fat rolls, and he just doesn't move. He stays in one spot. And what's also, if you see Jabba the Hutt, he's always got a chain. He's holding a chain in his hand. And attached to that chain is usually a slave. And that slave is chained by the neck or the waist or the foot or wherever it is. And what Jabba the Hutt does is he pulls the slave around at his will and his whim. And so this is how I saw this giant, is that we have voluntarily chained ourselves to this giant of remain undisturbed. That just giant goes nowhere. It just sits where it's comfortable, it doesn't move, and then moves us around at our own, at will. And we have voluntarily chained ourselves to him. And so how would you recognize this giant? This giant is around the preservation of comfort, the preservation of stability, and word number 1, the preservation of convenience is word number 1. And what I've noticed around these giants as we've been working the last few weeks through them, I've noticed that all these giants are disguised as something. Just like the devil comes as a counterfeit, right? To come and steal and kill and destroy, but it always looks so similar to what the gospel says, but it's not. And it's the same with the giants. The giants come in these disguises. And the giants of remain undisturbed disguises are wisdom. Well, it's wise to be stable, right? It's wise. It's wise to be comfortable. The other disguise is caution, which is word number 2 in your books. So what's wrong with being cautious? It's, it's okay to be cautious. You don't want to harm yourself and also it is disguised as this desire for peace in our lives. I just want peace. Please don't rock the boat. I just want peace. I need a very zen life, right? We've heard that, where people step out into the world and we just want calm. It's just got to be calm. And then what happens is we cultivate this lifestyle that is incredibly protected and it has 0 interruptions. And the one phrase that we find ourselves using, and it's so easy to use in Johannesburg, is, I am busy. Okay, I've used it. One of my most uncomfortable things to do back in the day was sit across the table with another woman and have coffee. Okay, freaked me out. Okay, if Cindy knows this, John knows this, ladies' night. Ladies, I can't tell you. It's so uncomfortable for me. Okay, and I'm just like, I'm busy. I've got something on, right? That is what we use as our excuse because we just want to stay here. We don't want to step out of our comfort zone because it's not fun, and also there's a fear element to it, right? So you're probably asking the question, well, what's wrong with being comfortable? What's wrong with having certainty, which is word number 5? Well, the problem is this, it's a trap, because we start becoming spiritually apathetic. So word number 6 is apathy. And what happens with spiritual apathy is that our hearts start getting dull. And we start becoming so unresponsive to what God's asking us to do. And we see this in Matthew 13:14-15. It says, in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You'll be ever hearing, but never understanding. You'll be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they've closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. And so when we become spiritually apathetic, we close our ears to what God's saying. We close our eyes to what's saying because we're chained to this giant of remain undisturbed. And in James 2, verse 14-17, it says, what good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith, but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warmed and filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. it's so easy to sit in our comfortable space and go, I have faith. Yes, Jesus, I have faith. But if we're not actually walking out our faith, it's dead. It means nothing. It's very easy to have faith in a comfortable space. But when we start exercising and working it out, that's when we can go, okay, I do have faith for this. And then what happens with a spiritual apathy, then that leads to a stagnation. And when I think about stagnation I think of this body of water that's been baking in the sun for days and months and years on end. And it gets this layer of grime on it, and all these funky parasites come and breed in it, and the pool starts becoming smelly. And so we become, in this stagnation space, we start becoming spiritually unchanged. And then we start to smell as Christians. So we become spiritually unchanged, even when God is showing us and he's displaying to us, I need you to do this. We still decide that we're going to disobey what God's asking us to do. Why? Because it's inconvenient. Word number 8, inconvenient. And so this resistance to a change, it leads to our will getting hardened. It leads to us ignoring any growth opportunity that's available to us through God. And it leads us to becoming disobedient. And so this reminds me of the story, and I know Chris mentioned it when he spoke about the giants of staying control, of Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve in the garden, they were told not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they did. So they disobeyed God. And God's plan in the beginning was to have this heartfelt relationship with mankind. And when Adam and Eve disobeyed God, they separated themselves from God, because Scripture is very clear that God kicked them or threw them out of the Garden of Eden because of that sin. And so there's the separation. And that happens with us too. When we decide to disobey God, we create this separation between us and God. And in Jeremiah 29:11, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." And so what we do is we chain ourselves to this giant of remain undisturbed, and we go, I admire Jesus, I believe in Jesus, but we can't go anywhere because we're chained. And so we can't actually follow Jesus and exercise what he's asking us to do. So what happens is it becomes this tug of war of, okay, I want to do this, but I really like this. I want to do this, and we start having this tug of war with God. But we can see in Jeremiah that God doesn't want to harm us. He doesn't want to hurt us. He has a plan and a purpose for us to grow. And so that we can also, and he has that picture. Remember I spoke about, he has this picture for us on our lives and what he's painted for us. And that's what he's pointing us towards. And then what happens is once we get into the stagnation space, this leads to being disengaged, which is word number 9. And when we are disengaged, we disengage ourselves from people. And so we then have this lack of compassion, which is word number 7. We have a lack of compassion in action, even when God's actually prompting us to do something. So God will say, okay, I need you to go, just go give that person a hug. I don't hug. God, I don't do hugging, you know that. Okay, I don't. I'll do a fist bump. Okay? And I'm not dissing anyone, love you guys. But God will say, just go give that person a meal. Or maybe just pop in for coffee, or just drop them a WhatsApp. Cindy spoke about this on Ladies' Night. If somebody pops into your mind, that's God saying to you, reach out to that person. But because I'm too busy, or because, oh no, wait, hold on, but this is so comfortable. I really don't want to go have coffee with another chick. It really freaks me out. Ladies' night, I'm sure I could find something else to do on a Friday night. And so what we do is we become disobedient, but what we actually have done is through that disobedience, we are disengaging from the people that God is calling us to go and speak to so that he can work in their lives. So we are a conduit. And we are stopping ourselves from being a conduit for God to be able to work in other people's lives. And so there are 3 ways. Oh, no, I want to lead. Before I go there, I want to speak about a story in the Bible. You all know it. It's in Luke 10, verse 30 to 35. And it's a story about a man who gets attacked by robbers on a road. He's beaten, he's stripped of everything he has, so they rob him blind. And a priest comes along and sees him, and he crosses to the other side of the road, pretends he doesn't see him, and carries on walking, right? Because, yeah, it's a little inconvenient. I don't have time. I'm on my way. I've got a church service to do, so I'm good. A Levite comes along, sees the man as well, and does pretty much the same thing. But along comes a good Samaritan. Okay, he's called the Good Samaritan, but he's actually a Samaritan. And he comes along and he stops. And he bandages the man's wounds. So I can imagine he didn't come with a medic kit. He didn't have bandages in his bag. So I'm imagining he probably started ripping parts of his tunic up to bandage these wounds. He had oil and wine in his bag, so he poured that to help the man. He then loaded the man up onto his animal and then led the man to town. But so I can imagine the Samaritan didn't climb on that animal. He probably pulled the animal along, making sure the man didn't fall off, right? And then got to town and then booked a room at the inn, cared for the man. And so the Samaritan probably also had business to do. He must have been going somewhere, right? And so he then says to the innkeeper, here's 2 denarii. Please, can you just keep an eye on this guy? I will be back, and then just keep a tally of how much I owe you when I get back. Okay. So what's so interesting about this story that actually really lit up like a wildfire in my mind was, first of all, it cost that Samaritan. Okay, it cost him time. He had to stop where he was going. His clothes, he ripped up his clothes, so he might be going for a job interview, I don't know. Now he's got ripped clothes. So it cost him his resources, his oil and his wine, which probably could have been either a gift, or maybe he was going to taking it home with him, or maybe he was going to use it later for himself. It cost him his animal, so he had to then walk, so his own energy and effort, so he had to now walk the rest of the way, and probably at a slower pace. He probably went into, I'm just surmising, it doesn't say in the story, I'm just adding some poetic license. And so maybe he wasn't going to the town he ended up at. Maybe the closest town wasn't the town he was going to. And so went into that town and then booked a room, which maybe what he didn't have the money for, gave the innkeeper the money. So do you see all the costs that are racking up for the Samaritan? But never once in that story did you hear the Samaritan grumble about it. And that's what's happening to us, is that God's putting those people who are getting emotionally robbed and emotionally stolen from, or whatever it might be, in their own lives. And are we the priest that walks past and carries on? Are we the Levite, are we the Levite that goes past? Or are we the Samaritan that goes, you know what, I was actually going somewhere else, but it's okay. I can postpone that. Because when we're chained to this giant of remain undisturbed, we can't do that, because our lives are more important. What we're doing is way more important. And sometimes we need to go, okay, hold on. What's more important to God? And what is happening with others around us? Because I've been saying this in our Connect groups, so something that's lit up about the giants is it's around sorting ourselves out with the giants so that we can be a blessing to others. It's the others that are getting all the fruit that comes out of us fixing ourselves and getting free from the giants. And so the 3 things that we can do to break these chains and become unchained from this giant is, first of all, to respond in obedience. In James 1:22, it says, be doers of the word and not hearers only. The second thing is to embrace discomfort. Okay. So Cass even said earlier, she goes, yeah, I can do a lot of uncomfortable things. She says, but moving me to a different chair this morning, Dane moved everyone to a different chair. She goes, now you've overstepped the line. Okay. So embrace discomfort. And the third thing is to move from a self-preservation to a compassion for others and to take risks for others. And so what happens when we start doing that is we are making, like the Samaritan did, we make personal sacrifices. And that's word number 4, sacrifice. And we allow God to stretch us, and we get stretched, which is word number 10, by him. And so like I began this morning, I would like to finish in a story. And so it's more of a testimony around what our family has been through. So in my 21 years of being married to my husband, I have moved home 7 times. Okay, so please do the math on that. I'm a human that does not enjoy being uncomfortable. Okay, I enjoy my spaces. I know where everything is. I get creature comforts. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I married a husband that loves to move all the time and sell stuff. Okay, and he keeps selling my houses. Okay, and through this process, I've actually learned to embrace the discomfort. Okay, so I'm like, okay, we're gonna pack boxes again. It's all right. Like we're just gonna roll with it. So, but move number 6 happened a couple of years back, and we felt God say to us that we need to move to a farm so that we can. And this farm that we were going to buy was situated between 2 squatter camps. And someone very close to us referred it as a wart on a hag's nose. Okay, so that just paints the picture of where we were moving to. Okay, that was the perceptions of this farm, and we were the whole thing that God had put on our hearts was He liked to build a training center for farming God's way, so that people could come in. We could tell them the good news of Jesus Christ. We could disciple with them because they lived in that community, and so that we could assist them in getting out of this yoke under the yoke of poverty through our farming, through the farming techniques. And this was our heart. So we knew this was what God was in it when our house sold to people living in Australia that'd never seen our home, and it sold. They bought it, they'd never seen it. And Hugh then said the one day, he goes, it would be so amazing if they could buy our furniture and all our appliances, because I really hate moving all the big stuff. The words had not even come out of his mouth, and the estate agent phoned me and said the people would like to buy all your furniture and all your appliances. And then I told my husband to keep his mouth shut after that. So we moved with everything that was in our cupboards, and that was it. And what had happened about 2 weeks prior to our move was there was a song that just came on in the car, and it was a song about Abraham. And it said, on this altar and on this road, I lay down my flesh and bone. And it speaks about where God takes him from his home. And I just wept. I wept, and I just kept crying. And I'm like, God, I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know why this is like hitting me so hard. And looking back, it's because He was taking me into, this was the most uncomfortable move I ever had to do in my life, because it took me away from everything that I know. The security, what's going to happen. I'm going to farm land, for heaven's sake. I'm like, I have this tiny garden. Plants, like flowers don't even grow with me. So I'm thinking, God, this has to, we're going to need you big time. And so we woke up the one Saturday, was moving day. And it's the first time Hugh's ever done this. So Hugh is not a very excited person in the morning. It takes him about 10 coffees to get there. And so he woke up that morning and he was like, I cannot wait to move. I'm so excited. And I was like, me too, but this is really cool. Like, it was so awesome to see the excitement around this move. And I know my kids are going to kill me now, but if you don't know my boys, I have the most amazing boys. During this whole process, my kids did not complain once. And if I say that this move cost my boys more, it cost my kids more than I feel it cost my husband and I. And my kids didn't grumble once about it. They were just like, okay, we've done this so many times, we're going to do this, right? And so we moved in on the Saturday. Now we moved into a house that we were still renovating. We didn't have a kitchen. We didn't have enough rooms for everyone. It was a lot. And so it was incredibly uncomfortable. And so later that day, we got sideswiped by something. And I cried myself to sleep that night. I'm like, God, I know we heard you. And the week carried on. And on Thursday, we got sideswiped a second time. But this time we were given, we had to make a choice. We were given a choice by somebody around the farm. And I was like, okay. So we sat up as a family till 2 a.m, praying and discussing what should we do. And so our move number 7 happened the following Saturday into a rental. Okay, so it was our quickest move. We lived on a farm for a week. But what's so incredible about the rental that we moved into is that we actually only signed a rental agreement 2 months later after moving, which is unheard of. Okay, I'm assuming. Okay, this was like my first kind of like way around this. And so we were like, okay, cool. We can see God's hand in this. But we're like, God, why? Why would you move us for a week and then move us out? And it was a hard time because we had a lot of people going, yeah, told you so. Yeah, bad idea. Yeah, you guys, whatever. You guys are weird. And so I even got, it's because you guys weren't being responsible parents. You guys were going into a dangerous area. And I was like, are you serious? But what happened was, so now remember why we were doing it. It was a training center, getting the lost saved, discipling the Christians, the new Christians, and getting them out from the yoke of poverty. But we already had a training space in our area that had been going for 10 years, but we felt that there needed to be a pivot. But what happened was this training space is still available, and it's the land that we farm on. So they've given us a piece of land that we've been farming on for about 10 years. Not Hugh and I, but Hugh's parents have been farming on it. And so they've handed it over to certain people to look after. And what had happened was we moved in the July, our 7th move in the July. In the March, so relationships between this center and the parties of the farming was not great. They were never great. It was a lot of fighting and a lot of conflict and all of a sudden in March, the relationship did this. No one said something. No one did something. Nobody did anything different. All I can tell you, that was God that went, right, this is a relationship that needs to work. And there was this flick in a switch with the relationships. And it's such a beautiful relationship that we have with them. We get to bless them. They bless us. It's really beautiful. But not only that, there's the garden. So when I talk about gardens, it's not flower gardens. They're vegetable gardens. The gardens that we grow there, the soil has never been healthier to this day. Our gardens have never looked as beautiful. We used to struggle with a lot of pests. We're not struggling with those pests anymore. And so I started seeing these blessings that came out of this obedience of doing this weird move, but then the blessing of what we saw God show us around a training center, we're seeing that, but in a different space. You're following with me? And so, and not only that, we had other blessings that came with it. That's for another day. And so we I grappled with God for a long time. It was for a year. And I kept saying, God, why did you move us for a week? Why? Did we not hear you? And I'm still questioning. God was radio silent on that topic for an entire year. Because to this day, when I look back, I see, because there was still an outworking that was happening with the gardens and with the relationships and even with our work. And so it was about a year, and I drove past the farm, and I said to God, why? And that's when he answered me. And he said to me, do you remember the song that came on your radio about Abraham? And he says it was around Abraham. So you know the story of Abraham. He was asked to sacrifice his son. And he said, Chereen, I just wanted to see if you would do it. I just wanted to see how far you would go to obey me. And that is what God is asking of us. If we open our ears and we open our eyes, we start seeing when we are out of our comfort zone, and we start saying to God, what do you want from me? He opens that up and he goes, sometimes it looks stupid. You get mocked. and you're like, going, oh my word, I'm starting to question whether I hear God or not. But it's that space where God goes, I'm just trying to see how far can I push you? How far are you willing to go to follow me? How far are you willing to go to risk it for others?
Thank you so much for joining us. If you think you're about taking this further, you can follow us on our website. There you will find access to our previous sermons, our banking details, or if you just want to contact us. If you consider yourself to be part of Center Church, we'd just like to thank you for your continuous support and partnership. Have a sick day.